Okay, I think that should be working now. Sweet. All right. I'm just going to introduce myself first, and then you can go ahead and like talk about yourself and like your relation to VCU Arts and like how you fit in there. My name's Colleen. I'm Colleen Topping. I'm a sophomore in the department, so it's my first year in painting and printmaking and my second year at VCU Arts. And yeah, I have a minor in art history, or I'm about to have a minor in art history, and that's sort of my deal at VCU Arts. So,
Cool.
yeah.
Yeah. So my name is LaRissa Rogers. I graduated from VCU Arts in 2019. I did a double major and double minor. So it took me a little bit longer to complete it, but I graduated with a BFA in painting and printmaking, and then also a BIS in interdisciplinary studies. And then I minored in art history and business. Sorry, still a little slow.
No worries.
And yeah, so that's my association with VCU Arts. And then I'm currently in grad school. I'm at UCLA, and I'm not there yet because of COVID, but I did just get a new studio, and that's the space I'm in, which I'm super excited about. Yeah, so it's kind of my deal.
Awesome. So I wanted to ask you just about like your general experience at VCU Arts and sort of starting off with like your decision for your major and like your eventual minors. So like can you tell me a little about like when you first applied and when you first got into VCU Arts, like what your expectations were and what sort of led you to choosing your major?
Yeah, I think that my story is a little unique because in high school, I had a teacher. Well, he was kind of like a mentor, and he was my basketball coach because I played a ton of sports growing up, and that's kind of like what I thought I was going to do. I wanted to play in the WNBA. So definitely not doing that now, but that was like goals if you would have asked me when I was like little. And so he actually went to VCU and as a basketball player, but he was familiar with the school, kind of like with the arts program and how well it was doing. And in high school, well, actually always like growing up, I loved art, but I didn't really think that like that's what I wanted to do. So it wasn't until my senior year when my professor was like, you have to apply to at least one art school. And on a whim, I kind of applied to VCU Arts and I got in. And I didn't understand the magnitude of it at the time. And I also was, I think, coming in without the vocabulary that a lot of the other students were coming in, and without a lot of the kind of like skill sets. So I started painting, I think, sophomore year maybe of high school, and I started dabbling with oils, and then I decided like that's what I wanted to do. I really love painting, and I think making my decision to come here was kind of just like me figuring out what I wanted to do like with my life, which sounds a little cliche, but that's kind of what it was, because I was like, what else would I go into? I was like, I would go in undeclared, and then would I become a lawyer? I was like, I don't know. Would I be a scientist? I hate science. I don't know. So this seemed like the right move for me. And yeah, so I came in, and then the first year you go through AFO, and I think that was just like a really learning period for me, because I had never really been introduced to any of the other mediums other than painting. And that was really eye-opening. And also just being in the environment, growing up in Charlottesville, and going to a private school all my life, it was definitely kind of like a switch, especially for me, because I was within a predominantly white middle upper class institution. And so just my body being in that space was a disruption. So moving to Richmond and kind of being introduced to all of the different people, the different like ideologies. It was really just kind of like, it was a learning period for me where I just started to come into myself. And I think that was kind of one of the reasons that I decided to come to VCU, because of that possibility. And then I think after the first year, I was still kind of like, what's this sculpture thing? Like, what's this performance thing? Like, what's this video thing? Which is funny that I say that now. It's like, I'm a painter. So like, that's why I decided to go into the painting department, which is kind of funny because after, like, you're a sophomore now, after my sophomore year, I never painted again in the painting department. And so that's why I say it's so funny now. And I think that that was what really allowed me to like expand my breadth as an artist, was because I was so, I think, set on this idea that paint has to be on canvas and then it was also strange because I was never like technically trained in oil paint. So I kind of like taught myself everything. So it's kind of interesting that I had that like ideal of like, that's what this painting had to be. But even in my painting was like kind of unconventional. So I think that it was really my sophomore, junior year, I studied abroad, and I also took a experimental drawing class with a grad student. And I think that was one of my best experiences within the department, was interacting with the grad students. Even before I started like grooming relationships with them, just having them as professors, I think was instrumental. So yeah, I think I kind of went on a little tangent, but.
No, you're great. It's so funny, like the way I hear everyone describe coming, or like, why they came to VCU Arts and like how they ended up in the painting department, the few people that I've talked to, because I feel like I sort of had an opposite starting off experience. I knew I wanted to go to art school. I knew that I wanted to paint and to draw and to try lots of different things, but I was sort of set on like, this is where I want to go. And it makes the most sense to me in my head because like nothing else really interested me. And it was more just I knew I wanted to go to art school, but it was the program that surprised me because I was like, I didn't know I was going to find myself here at BC Arts. I'm from New Jersey, so I'm not really close to here. And
Awesome. I lived in New Jersey for a while, and my brother went to Rutgers. And so I was there a lot, and I love New Jersey. Well, it has it's a love-hate relationship, but it's a really cool place.
I love New Jersey. I'm proud of it. But like I mean there's so many good options closer to home for me. So coming here was a really sort of not in my plan, but since I found myself here, the way you described like going into the painting department and then never painting again after a certain amount of time, like I really enjoy now, even though I'm so early in my sort of path through painting, I know that I can sort of do whatever I want with under that like visor of painting and printmaking. Like that really encouraged me to join, just like talking to people and knowing that like, oh, I became a painting and printmaking major and now I really do video work, and that's sort of like solely where they fall, or they can incorporate their painting practice into like sort of any medium that they want, or that even after their undergrad, like they take that experience, if you were painting like your entire time at VCU Arts, and just sort of like mold that into whatever thing you wanted. So I've found that really encouraging looking forward. Everyone always talks about like, even if you were dead set or you had no idea that you were going to find yourself a painting major, you sort of, everyone has like the same, like, you think you're going one way and then it can sort of just completely take off in another direction that's like way better for you that you never expected, which is cool.
Yeah, I think that that's like really awesome. And I think for me that expanded kind of my conceptually of, because at a certain point when I was painting, I was like, this medium isn't doing what I wanted to do. I also always struggled with the history of painting, especially being a Black woman. And I'm always questioning kind of like, how am I using this medium, and am I just reverting to it because that's what I know? And I think that I still paint sometimes, but I think that the conversations being had within the painting department were also something that I'm glad that I made the decision to be in the painting department, even though I stopped painting after the first like year or so, because the way, yeah, I think just like the way that the conversations are being had can lend itself to mediums outside of painting and just the super technical. But then if you do have painters like that, then there's also space and room and people who know how to talk about your work, which is also really nice.
Yeah, for sure. So you've sort of touched on this a little bit, like I mean, even with the having those conversations and sort of figuring out your place in painting. Did like your expectations of the department change over time? Like, did you sort of think that did you have like an image? I think you've already sort of explained it, but like an image for yourself at the beginning of your time, and then towards the end, do you feel like you did a complete 180, or was it more like you sort of grew into the expectations that you had?
Yeah, I think I definitely grew into it. I think that sophomore year, I think, is difficult just because you're coming from this scenario where you have so many deadlines, so many unrealistic, crazy prompts and deadlines, and you're just like, go, 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 go. And then you come into the department, and it's a lot more relaxed, it's more self led. And I think that that's something that I had a little bit of trouble in the beginning, was because I didn't come from I didn't understand concept, or like what was my practice, like what am I doing, like what am I talking about. And I don't think that the first year really lended itself to really be able to explore like what you want to talk about in your work. It was more of learning skill sets. So I think it was a little bit of a shock coming in sophomore year, because you're kind of like, okay, they're telling me that I have the freedom to do whatever I want. And you're kind of like, what do I do? So I think that like the first couple of years was really kind of just like nurturing and finding myself and coming into myself. And I don't think it was really until I was also, you have to realize, like in between two different school, well, still within the art school, because my interdisciplinary major was between fashion merchandising, art history, and business and cultural studies. So I was kind of like bouncing in between both of the schools, kind of. And so I would have a semester where I was really just like art heavy, and then have a semester where it's like really business heavy, and I really didn't take any classes in our school. So I was also had this like weird in and out that I think didn't really allow me to focus all of my attention on my practice all the time. um, but I definitely think that the result was me doing a 180, but it didn't feel like that at the time. It definitely felt more of a growing into myself. Um, and I think most of that happened really the last year that I was within the program.
Gotcha. Yeah. Do you feel like if you want to talk more about that, like your interdisciplinary experience, like being able to explore more classes in like the main university outside of VCU Arts, do you feel like that was um, sort of like self-realized that you wanted to do that and sort of explore both? Do you feel like you were able to balance them well, like you said, doing one semester on, one semester off, sort of by chance? Like,
Yeah, I think I ended up balancing it pretty well, but coming into school, like I said, I was still kind of like, I'm gonna be an artist, but am I? So I still was like, I still am interested in these other things. So I dabbled around quite a bit. I was thinking about art education for a minute, and all throughout my undergrad, I was also an art teacher at Carver Middle School, and kind of also doing like these summer programs, like STEAM programs. And so I knew that teaching was something that I really liked to do as well. So I was bouncing in and out. And then after I did that, then I was like, oh, okay, maybe I want to do fashion merchandising. And then I studied abroad. And because I did added that on, I think maybe it was my third year, second year, I was just behind. Like I had missed completely the first year because I was in AFO, the requirements. So I was meeting with my advisor, and she was kind of like, "You're not going to graduate on time. You need it." Like, and I was like, "I'm not doing another year," because I was also working like 3 jobs at the time. So I was taking 20 plus credits a semester and working 3 jobs, and I was just overwhelmed. And so that's how I kind of like came into the interdisciplinary degree, which I think was better for me. And especially looking at my practice and how it's transformed, I really I consider myself an interdisciplinary artist. And I really do think that being able to combine and make a degree where I was picking and choosing like these aspects of these other degrees and kind of meshing them together kind of is indicative of my practice in a way, and kind of just the way that I kind of figure things out and navigate. So I I think that even when I graduated, I was kind of, and I think a lot of seniors find themselves in this position where they're like, okay, like what now? And I had both of these majors, and I think it was my senior year where I was really like, okay, this, like, I want to do this art thing, like, because it was a roller coaster. And and I think that also has to do with just like I found and aligned myself with the right people within the art department. And I think that's one thing that's super important for students to understand, is that you're not gonna vibe with everyone. And and not everyone is going to be your supporter. So you kind of do have to align yourself with those right people. And I think I aligned myself with the right professors, with the right students, with the right grad students that helped me kind of come into myself and realize myself and gain that community and support that I felt like I didn't have. So when I graduated, I still had these 2 degrees, and I ended up doing SSP, which is a fellowship through VCU Arts. And it was amazing. And it was a way for me to kind of really understand what a studio practice looked like outside of, it was still kind of academia, but um, kind of like outside that school, rigid school setting. And I was able to meet other artists and collaborate and just like think. And I think that was the point where I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. But I still ended up taking a job with my fashion merchandising degree. So like right after that, because I was like, money, like I gotta make money. Like, I can't just like not, I still have like, I have student loans. I've like, and you're like juggling all these things. So I took a year, and I ended up working for a fashion company. It was kind of like an leisure athletic wear company, where I was head of production and product development. And it was actually in New Jersey. So that's why I was in New Jersey. And yeah, it was an experience, and an experience that made me realize that that's not what I wanted to do. So I think that it's just like a lot of um, finding myself and like trial and error that led. And I'm sorry, I kind of went on a tangent, and I don't necessarily remember the initial question, but that's kind of like what led me to where I am now. And it was also, I think, that time period with the other major was really helpful, because I think that's something that is lacking a little bit within the curriculum of VCU Arts, is that it doesn't necessarily teach you the business side of art. And so I think that was really important to me and really helpful for me to take those business classes outside of the art department and kind of understand and apply that to my practice. And then also taking the other job was helpful in kind of seeing what my practice looks like and sustains itself. in a real life situation where you are working 40 plus hours a week and then still have to make time for your practice and eat and survive and be human.
Well, you led perfectly sort of into what I wanted to ask you anyway, which was, I mean, is something that's still on my mind. And I think even though it's sort of a narrative that I dislike, like I wish this wasn't how my brain worked, or how I think lots of people coming into choosing their major, coming out of AFO are thinking about. And this was like the first question that I asked when I was able to meet with painting students and I was like deciding, this is one of the first questions I asked that I always feel guilty about. I was like, how are you going to make money? Like, what is your future going to look like? Where will you find yourself? How are you going to balance your practice and your practical life, even though I feel like those two things sort of coexist? And it feels strange to like have to worry about those things and to feel guilty about like, how am I going to take maybe this practice that I love, this major that I'm really invested in because I want to conceptually understand how I want to make work, and how am I going to fuse that into maybe the expectations that my family has for me, my academic expectations for myself. Like, how am I going to balance all those things? I still feel like I don't have the answer to that for myself, but I really like how you've sort of, the way you explained it, like you've been able to, you found yourself meshing those things, like you can dabble in both, more of a typical practical work experience and understand how that might not work for what you want your future to look like.
Yeah, and I think that another thing to really kind of keep in the back of your mind is that you, at a certain point, I realized that I was willing to do whatever I needed to do to make the work that I wanted to make. Or and I, like I said, I was working multiple jobs within undergrad, and I think that as an artist, and I think Darius, I can't remember who's quoting this, but I'm not going to quote it because I can't remember exactly how to do it, and I don't want to put words in their mouth. But I think that at a certain point, you kind of have to put your ego aside when it comes to making money in art, because they don't always go hand in hand. um, and I think that you have to be willing, you have to come to a point where you're willing to be like, okay, like I will work as a barista to support my practice, or I'll have this terrible retail job. Because I did both of those. I also detailed cars. I was literally that one chick in the garage that was like busting out cars and scraping up people's gum on the back, like. And I think that that also, all of that goes into my practice, and I think that those experiences are super important in coming to realize what you're willing to sacrifice and what you're willing to do to actualize and make your art happen. And I think another thing was that my family was super supportive. They didn't really always understand what I was doing or why I was doing it. But I think that it's always helpful. And I know that that's not everyone's family, but I think that one thing that's really important and that helped me, especially that last year, figure out what I wanted to do, is that I aligned myself with a really supportive community. Even if it's not your family, like have art friends, have mentors that keep you accountable. And then like, so what are you working on? So what are you doing? So what are you reading? You're not? Well, maybe you should do that. you know? So, and collaborating too, because I know that that was one of the things that really, really kind of like nourished me during that initial period after undergrad, was being able to collaborate and make work with one of my now really great friends. And that's always also a way to kind of like keep each other accountable and kind of make work with less pressure. I know it always seems easier when you have someone else that's kind of like, okay, let's do this, and or like, that's silly, let's not do that. But I think like all of those things are really helpful in kind of like deciding how you want to actually um, go, you know, like within the art world. And there's also, I think, something that a lot of young artists, and I'm still a super young artist, but people in undergrad kind of forget is that there are so many types of artists, and figuring out what type of artist that you want to be, I think is super important. Figuring out if you want to be in biennials, if you want to be the art fair artist, if you want to be in galleries, if you like how you, if you want to be within education, alternative spaces, like what aligns with your practice. Because I think that one thing that was a huge conversation in undergrad, especially when I was there, was kind of like this idea of selling out. Like, what does that mean? So, like, all of these conversations are important to, I think, marinate on when you're in that space and kind of figure out what you want to do with that information when you leave.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, the sort of last question I was going to ask you, you've already sort of beautifully answered there. If you had like maybe a piece of advice or a few like smaller piece of advices of people entering into the painting department, or even just like students who are thinking about applying to art school, people choosing their major, if you could like, grab them by the shoulders and just be like, these are things to think about if you want to find yourself maybe in a place where I've been, or, if you want to figure out, if you want to choose the best path for you, like what sort of advice do you think you'd give?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think, and this is going to sound super cliche, but I think that just kind of like stay true to stay true to you. I think that with especially within departments, you can feel pressured to produce in a certain way or do a certain thing or get a little, professors may lean on you to do this or that. But I think just like kind of like stick to your gut and make work that you want to make work about in the way that you want to do it. I think that that's really important. And just don't let kind of like those outside voices influence the way that or the work that you're making. And I also think aligning yourself with the right professors, the right people, the right community to support the work that you're making. Because I think that I felt like I was lacking that the majority of my experience in VC Arts. It was literally not until the last semester that I was there where I was like, I felt like I was starting to gain that community and gain that support that I needed and kind of align myself and find those people that were going to like cheer me on. And I think that that's like most important.
Awesome. All right. Well, that was so great. That was really awesome. Just hearing you being able to talk about that.
I'm happy we were able to talk.
Yeah.
Good luck with
Thank you.
everything. I know it's just a crazy time to be, just to be, just to
Yeah.
like kind of like be in this. So good luck.
Well, thank you. And good luck to you too.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah,
Awesome. Well, adios.
have a great day.
You too.
Bye.